Mars was once alive, and we ignore the warning. For billions of years, Mars carried the conditions needed for life. Then it lost them, quietly and completely, and humanity barely noticed until it was too late. That delayed recognition represents one of the most significant failures of attention in scientific history, a failure whose consequences extend far beyond planetary science. To understand why this matters today, we have to confront an uncomfortable truth. Mars did not fail suddenly. It failed gradually, in ways that were almost invisible at first. That makes its story urgently relevant to the modern world, because the same slow processes that reshaped Mars are now being studied much closer to home. The parallels between planetary decline and contemporary environmental concerns grow sharper with each passing year. At first, Mars looked promising. Its surface showed valleys carved by flowing water, minerals formed only in wet environments. Evidence stacked quietly, mission after mission. Mars was not always cold and dead. It was active, dynamic, and potentially alive. That realization forced scientists to rethink how common life might be in the universe. The implications extended from biology to philosophy, reshaping humanity's understanding of its cosmic context. But understanding came late. By the time we recognized what Mars had been, the planet was already frozen in its final state. Whatever life once existed had vanished, leaving only chemical traces behind. Mars became a fossilized world, preserving its past but unable to recover it. That irreversibility stands as the central tragedy of the Martian story. The warning was there all along. A planet can lose habitability without dramatic collapse. Stability can erode slowly, unnoticed by those living through it. Mars showed that life does not need an asteroid to end. It only needs time and imbalance. That lesson challenges assumptions about catastrophe being the primary threat to existence. As data accumulated, a deeper narrative emerged. Mars once had protection, energy, and circulation. When those systems weakened, everything else followed. Water escaped. Atmosphere thinned. Climate drifted beyond repair. Mars crossed a threshold it could not reverse. Each loss enabled the next, creating cascades that no intervention could halt. Yet even as these discoveries mounted, the warning remained abstract. Mars was distant. Its failure felt theoretical. And so its story became a curiosity rather than a lesson. The gap between knowledge and response revealed something troubling about human cognition. But Mars was never just telling us about itself. It was offering a glimpse of what happens when planetary systems lose balance. And that message is far harder to ignore now. As scientists reconstructed Mars's history, the pattern became clearer and more unsettling. Mars did not lose life because it lacked potential. It lost life because it lost protection. And once that protection was gone, recovery was impossible. The sequence of failures followed physical laws that apply everywhere. Early Mars had a strong magnetic field. It shielded the planet from solar radiation and held the atmosphere in place. This invisible barrier allowed water to remain liquid and temperatures to stay stable. Life, if it emerged, had time to develop, but that shield did not last. Its disappearance marked the beginning of irreversible decline. When Mars's core cooled, the magnetic field weakened. Solar winds began stripping the atmosphere away molecule by molecule. The process was slow enough to escape notice, but relentless enough to guarantee collapse. Water evaporated into space. Climate systems unraveled. Mars crossed a line without realizing it. The transition from stable to doomed occurred without fanfare. This is where the warning becomes sharper. Mars did not collapse from excess change. It collapsed from gradual loss, from small failures compounding over millions of years. The kind of decline that does not trigger alarms until nothing can be done. That pattern of incremental deterioration applies to systems far beyond planetary atmospheres. Rovers later confirmed this story etched into the ground. Ancient shorelines, delta formations, minerals that only form in stable water. These were not signs of a brief experiment with habitability. They were signs of long-term balance that eventually failed. The geological record preserved evidence of what once existed and what was lost. Yet when these discoveries were announced, they were framed as triumphs of exploration, proof that we had uncovered Mars's secrets. Rarely were they treated as cautionary signals. The planet's death became data, not warning. That framing represented a missed opportunity for deeper reflection. Mars teaches a difficult lesson. Planetary health is not permanent. It must be maintained continuously. Once key systems weaken, collapse accelerates silently. Mars did not announce its end. It simply drifted beyond recovery. The quiet nature of its demise makes it more instructive, not less. And that quiet ending is what makes its story so dangerous to ignore. The conflict in Mars's story lies in how easily its collapse was misunderstood. For a long time, scientists searched for a single cause, a catastrophic event, a dramatic failure, something obvious enough to explain everything at once. But Mars refused to provide one. The planet resisted simple narratives. Instead, its decline unfolded through interconnected weaknesses. As the magnetic field faded, radiation increased. As radiation increased, water stability decreased. As water disappeared, atmospheric pressure dropped. Each step amplified the next. None of them alone seemed fatal. Together, they were irreversible. The complexity of the collapse made it harder to comprehend and easier to dismiss. This is where the warning becomes most unsettling. Mars did not suffer from one mistake. It suffered from delayed response. The systems that kept it alive weakened slowly enough that no immediate crisis demanded action. By the time the damage became visible, the planet had already crossed multiple thresholds. The window for intervention had closed long before the problem was recognized. On Earth, we often assume resilience is automatic, that systems will adapt, that balance will return on its own. Mars proves that assumption wrong. Resilience has limits, and when those limits are passed quietly, recovery becomes impossible. The planet stands as evidence against complacency. Even today, Mars continues losing atmosphere space. The process never stopped. The planet remains locked in decline, preserved in a permanent aftermath. It is not dead in the way we imagine death. It is suspended in failure. That ongoing deterioration underscores the finality of its transformation. This reality challenges how we define planetary danger. Not as sudden collapse, but as unnoticed erosion. Not as dramatic endings, but as slow disappearances. Mars forces us to confront the most uncomfortable kind of risk. The kind that feels manageable until it is not. That psychological dimension makes the warning harder to heed. The conflict, then, is not between life and death. It is between awareness and neglect. And Mars stands as the outcome of choosing the latter for too long. The climax of Mars' story is not its death, but its silence. A silence shaped by everything that was lost without resistance. Mars shows us that collapse does not need drama. It only needs time, imbalance, and inattention. That combination proves sufficient to end worlds. Once the planet crossed its critical thresholds, no force could reverse the damage. The atmosphere thinned beyond recovery. Water vanished beyond reach. Life, if it ever existed, lost every pathway to endure. Mars became a permanent record of what happens when protection systems fail quietly. Its current state preserves the endpoint of a process that began billions of years ago. The resolution of this story brings a warning into focus. Mars was not unlucky. It followed physical laws without mercy. And those same laws apply everywhere, including here. The lesson is not about space exploration. It is about recognizing decline before it becomes permanent. That recognition requires attention and humility. Mars reminds us that waiting for obvious catastrophe is a mistake. By the time danger feels urgent, options may already be gone. Stability must be protected continuously, not assumed indefinitely. The planet demonstrates that prevention outweighs response in importance. Mars cannot change its outcome, but its message still travels, not through words, but through absence, through what is no longer there, and through the realization that some endings arrive without announcing themselves. That silence carries more meaning than any proclamation. Subscribe to join the journey. Mars